video from 2023 was released showing a man in Surrey, British Columbia slashing another man's throat and pledging allegiance to the terrorist group ISIS.
Prosecutors will not appeal the acquittal of 5 former World Junior Hockey players accused of sexually assaulting a woman in London, Ontario hotel room. Accused of sexually assaulting a woman in a London, Ontario hotel room.
Advocacy groups are warning that the Liberal government's firearms ban and confiscation program undermines the rights of law-abiding citizens, threatens free societies, and will waste billions in taxpayer dollars. Hello Canada, it's Monday, August 25th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Isaac Lamoureux.
And I'm Walid Tamtam.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Police have released a 2023 video of a man slashing a bus rider's throat in Surrey, British Columbia, just minutes before calling 911 and pledging allegiance to ISIS. The video was previously shown in court during the trial of Abdul Aziz Kawam, 30 years old, for attempted murder and terrorism-related offenses. Global News obtained the video surveillance footage entered as evidence at Kawam's BC Supreme Court trial in Westminster. In the video, Kawam is seen assaulting a man with a knife at a bus stop near Fraser Highway and 156th Street before boarding a bus and slashing another passenger in the throat on April 1st, 2023. Security video from inside the bus shows Kawam walking onto the vehicle, followed, a few seconds later, by his victim. Both stood near the rear exit doors of the bus and rode together in silence for approximately 3 minutes, not speaking or interacting. Kawam then suddenly pulled out a large knife and slashed at the victim's neck 3 times, intending to kill him, according to admissions submitted at trial. As bus passengers are heard screaming in the video, the victim used his body to push Kawam out of the bus while still managing to hold on to his coffee. Oren Bick, General Counsel with the Public Prosecution Service of Canada, said, quote, "He was bleeding out of his neck and he still managed to throw his attacker off the bus." True North was present in New Westminster's BC Supreme Court when Kawam was deemed guilty in his judge-only trial. So Walid, it seems like we didn't hear about ISIS for a while, but it seems to be making a comeback in the news lately. What is going on?
Well, Isaac, globally speaking, there is a resurgence of ISIS since certain events have been happening in Syria, but to bring it to Canada, there's been an exceptionally high level of ISIS activity happening in Canada in recent years. I mean, I'll give you a few examples. Firstly, we've had a situation recently that was exposed in an article of ours last week. 8 ISIS women, or we can call them ISIS brides, got taxpayer-funded luxury hotel services. At least $170,000 were billed to the taxpayer to cover their business class flights, hotel rooms, wine, and snacks. So these women were brought back to Canada along with their children in 3 separate operations between 2022 and 2023, after spending years in Kurdish-run detention camps following the collapse of ISIS. And of course, ever since their arrival in Montreal Airport, they've been given hotel stays, purchases of Timbits, Doritos, other snacks while at the hotels, even wine. It's insane. Of course, there are a few high-profile cases we know about in British Columbia. Kimberly Pullman, who is facing terrorism charges and who could become the first ever woman in Canadian history to face or be charged and convicted with terrorism. We also have a situation of a lady named Umaima Shuai of Montreal, who was given a ridiculously low sentence of 1 day in jail. This was after being held for 100 days in pre-custody. And of course, the judge allowed that to be counted towards the consequence, enabling a 1 day sentence. Insane stuff. So absolutely, we've seen that. And here's one more story, actually. A convicted ISIS sniper was given 12 years for kidnapping on behalf of ISIS. And conservative public safety critic Frank Caputo raised concerns when that man, I think his name is Hussein Borhat, was found, apparently, to be in minimum security prison. So if we actually do put a sentence on these individuals, they're receiving minimal prison time, very lax conditions, almost similar to that of a attached apartment or townhouse kind of experience. It's insane. Something has to change with this, but of course, these are only a few stories, and there's much more out there, Isaac. Prosecutors will not appeal the acquittal of five former World Junior hockey players accused of sexually assaulting a woman in a London, Ontario hotel room in 2018. On July 24th, Ontario Superior Court Justice Maria Carosia found Michael McLeod, Carter Hart, Alex Fermenton, Dylan Dubé, and Kyle Foote not guilty after a 2-month trial. The judge ruled the testimony of the sole complainant and the Crown's key witness was, quote, neither reliable nor credible. She also noted evidence that showed, quote, certainly no violence occurred, and that one of the accused had not engaged in any activity of a sexual nature. The trial was marked by several unusual developments, including large protests outside the London courthouse and the discharge of two juries before proceeding by judge alone. Defense lawyers argued the complainant instigated sexual activity and later sought monetary gain. Two videos presented as evidence in court appear to show the complainant consenting. In one video, she can be seen smiling and describing the encounter as consensual before complaining to the camera, quote, being too sober. The Ministry of the Attorney General had 30 days to file an appeal. On Thursday, Fermenton's lawyer, Dan Brown, confirmed the Crown will not challenge the acquittals. In a written statement, Brown said, quote, while no police investigation is perfect, the London police got it right 7 years ago by deciding it would be a mistake to charge Alex. The evidence always demonstrated that he did not commit a sexual assault. However, political and media pressure brought this allegation back into the spotlight in 2022, and the Crown Attorney knowingly forged ahead. So, Isaac, what's been the buzz around this case? Were people outraged that this case went on for as long as it did?
Yeah, Walid, the Hockey Canada trial has been one of the most polarizing and closely followed court cases in recent memory of hockey or professional sports altogether, and the public response has reflected that. From the start of the proceedings in London, Ontario, large crowds of demonstrators were a constant presence outside the courtroom. Supporters of the complainant gathered under the banner of the Me Too movement, carrying signs reading, I believe you EM, and chanting, what do we want justice? When do we want it now? And on the other side, counter-protesters aligned with the Him Too movement carried placards declaring 5 careers ruined and EM cheated. And the credibility of the complainant, referred to as EM under the publication ban as you mentioned, became the focal point of the trial. Defense lawyers repeatedly questioned her testimony, pointing to the inconsistencies you mentioned briefly and highlighting the two videos presented in court that appeared to show her consenting to the encounter. Lawyers also argued that she had financial motives given her $3.5 million civil lawsuit against Hockey Canada that was settled in 2022, a settlement Justice Carocha described as among the quickest she had ever seen. But the acquittals did not resolve the matter in the professional hockey world. The National Hockey League announced it would conduct its own investigation and declared the players ineligible to return in the meantime. And in a public statement, the NHL described the allegations as very disturbing and said that even if not determined to have been criminal, the behavior at issue was unacceptable. So in a way, the NHL is acting like courts of their own there. And I just want to remind people that the complainant will remain anonymous for life, while these hockey players have lost millions of dollars in lost revenue and will forever be tarnished in their careers and personal lives, despite every single one of them being found not guilty. So that just leaves me with the question, if a complainant is left anonymous to be protected, then why aren't the defendants as well?
Absolutely. And I must say, on the case of this hockey trial, I mean, these are people that have very, very short careers. The time off the ice and the time dealt with this case will be time that will create irreparable damage on their careers. Of course, a lot of money loss, reputation, and possible Olympic or NHL dreams down the drain because of a false accusation.
Chris Sims, the Alberta director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and Rod Galtaka, the president of the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights, discussed the Liberal gun ban this week on Juno News. On Wednesday, Sims said, quote, a lot of folks in the media keep calling this thing a buyback. It is not a buyback. I did not purchase my gun from the government. This is a confiscation of private property which was legally obtained, and now they've changed the rules. The federal government claimed the newly prohibited models would affect roughly 140,000 firearms across Canada. However, Giltaca noted the government can't know the exact tally or their location because the, quote, overwhelming majority of these firearms are unregistered. Based on available figures, he expects the number to be closer to 500,000, possibly surpassing 1 million. There are roughly 2.5 million lawful gun owners in Canada, including licenses for both restricted and non-restricted firearms. Canada already has a tightly regulated firearm system, which the CCFR supports, including daily criminal record checks, storage requirements, and transportation laws. Giltaca stressed that gun ownership is not just a hobby. He said, quote, at the worst moment in your life when no one is there to help you, this sport shooting or hunting tool can save your life.
You are not a slave. You are a citizen. You are entrusted with a variety of responsibilities, just like you are entrusted with a driver's license. We do not ban cars. I don't like... There's so many analogies floating around all the time, right? I've heard them all and I've heard them ad nauseum. So it's, but we'll just use this one for now. I guess I'm talking to myself to not get annoyed with them. But, everyone is entrusted with a driver's license and there's no criminal background check required. But yet the odd person drives drunk, wipes an entire family out. And that's real. But the first reaction of the government or the public isn't like, obviously people shouldn't own cars, or they should only go to and from specific places with permission of the government. Of course not. They're like, these people broke the rules, throw them in jail.
The federal government introduced a firearms confiscation program in 2020 through an order in council protecting thousands of legal firearms. So, Walid, how much money has the Liberal government spent on these anti-gun programs like the firearms bans and the buyback program, and how successful has it been?
Yeah, Isaac, there's a few dimensions to this. First of all, in terms of success, I don't think it's been successful at all because the goal stated was public safety. Toronto Police Association president said that the seizures will not make a dent in the violence plaguing Canada's largest city. He said, quote, in the city of Toronto, which is the focal point for a lot of the conversation around gun violence, it will have little to zero impact on firearm crime we're seeing in the city. It is a small number of gang or organized crime members involved in firearm violence in the city, and it is not legal gun owners. And as Chris Sims said, this is a gun confiscation targeted towards legal gun owners. Now, in terms of cost, that is something we don't have a perfect number on. But my estimates here say close to $2 billion. The program was initially projected to cost, and this was the rifle assault style, quote unquote, whatever that means, ban. The program was projected to cost around $742.5 million. However, according to a Liberal government briefing from all the way back in 2019, which was revealed by the Gun Blog, costs were estimated to balloon to $1.8 billion. So in terms of cost, it's been bloated, and in terms of success, as police chiefs have said, it's been very limited, of course. So I would say overall, it's been an unsuccessful, or rather a failed policy.
Yeah, Walid, I'll just add a few things. We've seen this cost rise by hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars every year. And Rod Giltaca of the CCFR, he actually predicts that the total cost in the end will be $10 billion. And remember, this 742 million or whatever number that we're citing, it's costed already, is on like consultation and stuff. They haven't even confiscated a single gun. And then one last reminder, every police association over the last several years, when they're citing crimes that are being committed, it's in the 90th plus percentile of guns that are being found at crime scenes are not even from Canada. They're smuggled in from other countries. So this ban does absolutely nothing to combat those crimes. That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.